I was feeling very tired, so I said no to a couple of friends in some conversations that they were trying to have with me that I knew I didn't have the mental energy to properly devote myself to, because I don't like to give divided attention if a friend is talking to me. I'd prefer to just wait till later. But anyway, I digress. I had a shower and, my thoughts have been swimming the past few days because, if you haven't been watching my usual, personal vlogs, what has happened is I've ended up getting in contact with, a musician that I greatly admire. And, you know, I ended up sort of digging around a bit about them more than I might have otherwise done because, basically once you know somebody, it creates greater curiosity about them and what they do. And, in the things I did digging around, what I found was that he expressed a great deal of dissatisfaction with his life, at least a few years back. That was how he seemed to feel. And he, part of that dissatisfaction was expressed in the form of being highly competitive. And, there were certain things that had gone well and gone badly in his career that would, utterly justify feelings of upset or dissatisfaction, and just in life in general. But, it brought to mind times in my life where I had been highly competitive and, to the extent where it was making me miserable. And I naturally stopped and had to think about why I felt so miserable back then, and why I was so competitive as I was at the time. And part of it was the idea of relative success, as in comparing yourself to others, and if you're doing better than the people around you, you'd feel better about yourself. If you're doing worse than the people around you, you feel worse about yourself. And a lot of people feel this way. For a lot of people, feeling this way is quite natural, and on a certain level, it's natural for all people to feel this way. However, I was able to recognize certain flaws in this style of thinking. Predominantly, basically, if you are building your happiness not on something you have, but on something you don't, and you're always doing this, like it's not just a specific thing, but your life is always about, well, I don't have that yet, therefore I'm dissatisfied, then you will never reach a point in your life where you are happy and where you are satisfied. But also, there is this question of human worth and, the value of a person. And a lot of people seem to believe that, your value can be measured by your success, and particularly your success in comparison to the people around you. And yeah, it can seem like a very natural way to think if you were raised by people who placed excessive emphasis on success, whether it's financial or academic or, in terms of career. It's very easy to feel like if you're not, if you don't have an amazing job, if you don't have a ton of money, if you don't, know 5 languages, or all these things, play 100 instruments or something like that. It's very easy to feel like you're not as good as the people who can do those things. But and a lot of people will say things like, oh, but if you just work a bit harder, you'll be able to cultivate your own talents. Or they might say something like, well, you don't know what this person's life is really like behind closed doors, and so even if they seem to have it made outwardly, they may have problems inwardly, and that is true too. However, there's a bigger question here, which is human worth relative, or is it inherent? And it's in my mind the scary thought about seeing your success and your worth as being comparative to the people around you is that it creates this sort of conflict of interest where you lose the incentive to help the people around you, because if their life is as good as yours or better, you're always going to feel slighted by that fact. And it's going to make you hostile towards people, not because they've actually done anything wrong to you, but purely because they appear to accomplish more than you. And if you don't feel very good about yourself and your accomplishments, then you could be doing just as well, if not better, than these people and still feel envious of them as well. You can still end up feeling, needless levels of insecurity that just make you miserable and make it hard for people to be around you. But, also, if we are to consider human rights to be inalienable, to be, above question, then there has to be an extent to which human worth is inherent and, also above reproach or question. Because, if you decide that a person's life only has worth so long as they're accomplishing things, then does that mean that we need to start questioning the human rights of people who aren't doing so well? Are we meant to start thinking that homeless people have fewer rights and, are entitled to less dignity and respect than anyone else is? It's once you start going down the path of believing that human worth is relative or comparative rather than inherent, to me it comes across as a very worrying, ethical, slippery slope. And you might say, oh, but I do actually believe, people have rights even if they're not doing well. But the problem is, if you still believe that your worth is somehow undercut when the people around you are doing well, it's still going to create a subconscious bias for you, I think. Because yes, within myself, I did catch myself at times looking at the lives of people around me, and supposing I had a friend who I believed was materialistically more successful, and then something bad happened to them, I sometimes found myself thinking, oh good, at least they have this much wrong with them, therefore I can feel like my life isn't that bad. Which is kind of horrifying, because it means that instead of having empathy for my friend at having lost something, I'm just thinking about myself and gratifying my own ego, which, and it is all about ego gratification as well. If you have this kind of human values Olympics going on in your life all the time, then that's not going to leave you any room for really genuinely caring for the people around you when they are in trouble. Like, you won't have any real love for these people to work from. So, yeah, because you're too busy seeing them as enemies you have to overcome. Yeah. Wow, I said that much in under 9 minutes. Okay, that's a surprise. But yeah, those are my thoughts on the question of human worth. That, if we want to say that people are entitled to fair and correct treatment, regardless of who they are, if we want human rights to relate to us regardless of our circumstances, then I believe we have to dismiss the idea that accomplishments equal human worth completely. I believe that we have to dismiss the notion that success is relative, rather than just a question of, are you doing the best you can, and just accepting that everyone is doing the best that they can. And you might say, well, that sounds like a very shaky foundation for motivation. If I'm not trying to beat the people around me, then why should I try? And the thing that I have been trying to cultivate within myself is to become healthier and stronger, so that so that the things that I create and the things that I do come from a place of inner health rather than sickness. And, as I understand it, the famed guy that I know has gone on to to be happier than he was, and I'm, you know, very pleased for him. I think that's wonderful. But yes, a lot of the young men I meet express dissatisfaction. They express a deep conviction that in order for their life to be good and worthwhile, they need to have the perfect girlfriend and the perfect job and the perfect this and that, or at the least some of those things. And a lot of guys will say that they don't feel like they're worthy of a relationship with a woman unless their finances, unless they're making a lot of money and this sort of thing, which to me seems very concerning. To me it seems to set up a very poor precedence for real, sincere human connections, which, if I'm not mistaken, is what relationships are. That they are two people relating. So, you know, I'm left with those sorts of questions. And, you know, if you are somebody who believes that human worth is relative, you know, I invite you to reply and give your 2 cents. But, you know, as for myself, yeah, I think that it's better to live life from a place of seeking out your natural abilities and being motivated by that, rather than to be trying to prove yourself all of the time, trying to vindicate your existence. Because really, no one should be demanding that of you. Really, you were born deserving of love and acceptance. You were born deserving of fair treatment. And, you know, if you've been treated in such a way where you question that, that's something bad that has been done to you. That's something that needs to be healed and needs to be, you know, I want to believe that you can be loved out of that. I mean, for me, you know, it's easy for me to accept that idea because I am a Christian, so I believe that my worth is inherent and that God creates all people with inherent worth, unquestionable worth. But I understand that not everybody is going to think that way. That if you think from an evolutionary standpoint, that way of thinking might not so easily be accepted by you. But I think you might be better off trying to accept it, at least philosophically. At least. Yeah. That's my thought on that matter. Have a good night. Thanks for watching if you did. Bye!